Tu Diem left in tears. Can Toan save their love when someone stands in the way? The night was heavy with silence, yet the echo of Tu Diem's sobs lingered in every corner of Toan's heart. She walked away, her tears falling like shattered pieces of hope, leaving Toan standing alone in the shadow of choices he never wanted to face. Love was within his grasp, yet slipping away because of the walls others built between them. Toan's chest tightened with regret. Should he run after her, hold her, promise the world just to ease her pain? Or would his silence, his hesitation, cost him the only woman who had ever truly touched his soul? Between them now stood not just distance, but a force determined to tear them apart. And Toan knew, saving their love was not only about holding on, it was about fighting against everything that wanted to see them broken. Will Toan's love be strong enough to reach her before it's too late? Or will Tu Diem's tears be the final goodbye? The evening was heavy with silence, broken only by the sound of hurried footsteps fading into the night. Tu Diem ran, her tears blurring the world before her. Each drop carried the weight of unspoken words, the anguish of a heart wounded too many times. She did not look back. She could not. Behind her stood the man she loved, yet between them rose a wall she no longer believed they could cross. Toan froze at the doorway, his chest tightening as he watched her retreating figure. His hand reached out into the darkness, but it was too late. Tu Diem was gone. He had always thought love was enough to shield them from the storms of life. Tonight, he learned that love alone might not be strong enough. In the quiet that followed, Toan felt the cruel truth pressing against him. Someone had planted doubt in Tu Diem's heart, someone who wanted to keep them apart. He could almost hear her sobs echoing in his mind, cutting deeper than any wound. The house that had once been filled with laughter now felt like an empty shell, suffocating in its silence. Toan sank into the chair, staring at the door she had just closed. He knew he was losing her, and with her, a piece of himself. But deep inside, a fire began to burn, a stubborn flame of determination. Tu Diem might have left in tears, but Toan was not ready to let their story end this way. Sleep never came to Toan that night. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, as memories of Tu Diem washed over him. Her gentle smile, her quiet strength, the way her laughter once filled every corner of his heart. Now, all he could see were her tears, and all he could hear was the sound of the door closing behind her. The weight of guilt pressed heavily upon him. Why had he not stopped her? Why had he allowed the poison of others' words to push them apart? He knew who stood in their ways, someone close, someone powerful, someone whose disapproval had carved deep scars into Tu Diem's heart. Toan buried his face in his hands. His mother's sharp voice echoed in his mind, laced with prejudice and fear. She is not one of us. She will only bring shame. Those words had sliced through Tu Diem like a blade, and he, caught between filial duty and the woman he loved, had failed to shield her from the cruelty. His chest ached with the weight of two worlds pulling him apart. On one side was the family he had always obeyed, on the other, the fragile love that had saved him once before. He realized with a painful clarity, if he did not act now, if he allowed fear to guide him, Tu Diem would slip away forever. Toan rose before dawn, his eyes burning with sleepless resolve. For the first time, he was ready to choose, not as a son bound by tradition, but as a man fighting for love. The morning sun cast a pale light through the tall windows of the family home, but for Toan, the warmth meant nothing. His mother sat in her usual chair, her eyes sharp, her presence unyielding. The air was thick with tension, even before a word was spoken. Toan stood before her, his heart pounding, but his voice steady. "Mother," he began, "I cannot let this go on. Tu Diem is not what you think she is. She saved my life. She stood by me when no one else did. I love her, and I will not let her go." His mother's lips tightened into a thin line, her hands gripping the armrests as if anchoring herself against his defiance. "Love." She spat the word as if it were bitter. "Love cannot erase her past. Love cannot change who she is. She does not belong here, Toan. She will ruin you, ruin everything we have built." The words struck like daggers, but Toan did not flinch. He had expected this storm. "What ruins a man," he said, his voice low but fierce, "is not love, but fear. Fear of judgment, fear of breaking tradition. If I turn away from her now, I will lose more than I will lose myself." Silence followed, heavy and suffocating. His mother's eyes glistened with unspoken emotions, anger, fear, perhaps even a shadow of sorrow. Yet her pride would not bend. "If you choose her," she whispered coldly, "then you are no longer my son." Toan's breath caught, pain lancing through him. But he held her gaze, refusing to break. At that moment, he knew the battle had begun, not just against his mother's will, but against every chain that threatened to bind his love. He left the room with his decision burning in his chest. Nothing would stop him now. He would find Tu Diem, and he would fight for her, even if it meant standing alone. The city felt colder without her. Every familiar street seemed empty, every passing face a stranger. Toan searched restlessly, driving through alleys and marketplaces, asking anyone who might have seen a young woman walking alone with sorrow in her eyes. Yet the more he searched, the more despair pressed down on him. At dawn, he returned to the old house where they once found shelter together. The walls were damp, the air heavy with silence, but traces of her lingered: an abandoned scarf, the faint scent of wildflowers. Toan held the scarf tightly, his chest aching with longing. She was here. She must still be near. Meanwhile, Tu Diem wandered far from the city, her heart torn between love and fear. She found temporary refuge among strangers, hiding her pain behind a fragile smile. But every night, when the world grew quiet, she whispered Toan's name into the darkness, as if hoping the wind would carry her voice to him. Toan's search grew desperate. He spoke with shopkeepers, travelers, even the poorest on the streets. Some shook their heads, others pitied his determined eyes. She looked tired, one woman finally told him. She was carrying very little, as if she had left everything behind. Those words struck him like lightning. Tu Diem was not just lost, she was running, trying to escape the chains that haunted her. And if he did not find her soon, fear would bury her love beneath walls too high to climb. Exhausted, yet unyielding, Toan tightened his grip on the scarf and whispered to himself, "Wait for me. Tu Diem, no matter where you go, I will find you." The rain fell in heavy sheets, soaking Toan as he wandered through the edge of a quiet village. His body was exhausted, but his spirit refused to break. Just as despair threatened to crush him, he caught sight of a fragile figure beneath a tattered roof, clutching her knees against the cold. It was Tu Diem. Her face was pale, her eyes swollen from crying. But the moment she looked up, their gazes locked in. The world seemed to stop. Toan rushed to her side, kneeling in the mud, uncaring of the storm around them. "Tu Diem," he whispered, his voice breaking, "I found you." Tears welled in her eyes as she shook her head. "Why? Why come after me? Your mother will never accept me. I will only bring you pain." Her words trembled, but Toan silenced them with the fierce grip of his hands around hers. "No," he said firmly, his eyes burning with resolve. "The only pain I cannot endure is losing you. I don't care who stands in our way. I don't care what it costs me. I choose you, Tu Diem, always." Her lips quivered, torn between fear and hope. She had wanted to believe him, but doubt had held her captive. Now, looking into his eyes, she saw not hesitation, but truth, a kind of truth that could shatter chains. The rain washed away the silence between them. Tu Diem fell into his arms, sobbing against his chest, her tears mixing with the storm. Toan held her as if he would never let go again. That night, beneath the roar of thunder and the gentle promise of dawn, Toan made a vow. "No matter how many stand in our way, I will protect our love. From this moment on, we will walk forward together." And for the first time in a long while, Tu Diem allowed herself to believe that love, when fought for with all one's heart, could truly conquer every fear. Love is never an easy path. It is tested by doubts, by prejudice, and by the weight of expectations that others place upon us. Tu Diem and Toan's story reminds us that true love is not simply about passion or fleeting moments of happiness, it is about courage, sacrifice, and the determination to stand firm when the world tells us to let go. Toan discovered that silence in the face of opposition could cost him everything he cherished. By finding the strength to fight for Tu Diem, he proved that love is not weak but powerful, capable of breaking chains of fear and tradition. Tu Diem, in turn, learned that even the deepest wounds could be healed when met with unwavering devotion. The lesson is clear: love must be chosen every day, especially when someone stands in the way. Only then does it become more than a feeling, it becomes a promise. A bond that can survive storms and lead to hearts toward hope and light. Every love story faces its trials, but the true measure of love lies in how we respond to those trials. Some obstacles are born of circumstance, others from the prejudice of those around us. Yet, no matter the source, the choice remains the same: surrender to fear, or rise with faith. Toan's journey shows us that courage in love does not mean defying family with anger, but standing with integrity and truth. His heart was torn between duty and desire, but he learned that genuine love is not a betrayal of family, is an affirmation of humanity. When we love with honesty and respect, we open the door for understanding to grow, even in the hardest hearts. Tu Diem's pain teaches us another truth: that love sometimes requires trust, even when the future is uncertain. Fear can chain us to the past, but only trust allows us to step forward. By accepting Toan's vow, she allowed herself to believe again, proving that vulnerability can be an act of great strength. Ultimately, their story is a reminder that love, when nurtured with courage and patience, becomes more than just personal happiness, becomes a source of healing, reconciliation, and hope.